You're welcome. I feel like starting early.
So excited, huh?
It's just like, we're here.
Let's go. Let's go.
That's okay.
So what I'm going to do is item number 1, the millage rate. I'm going to just ask if we can shift that down to number 9, or 8, and bump everything up, and just ask that as a question, and you say yes or no?
Okay.
The
If
I-
you just say like by affirmation, so that if anyone does not agree, then they would speak up. But like, yeah, ask it like.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking with Chris and Stanley about that, how to do that, and that's just what he said to do, is just ask it as, before we actually adopt the agenda, just to shift it.
Let's go, Tyler.
Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. Thank you, everyone who didn't have to come out on this rainy day, for coming out on this rainy day. To begin with, do we have any announcements or communications?
Certainly. As you might know, we attended the Georgia Municipal Association's Small Cities Conference. Mayor Pro Tem Goldberg and I did, and it was a really fantastic experience. We made some relationships, which was kind of the focus of the conference, was partnerships and relationships, especially for small cities, since we can't really do it all ourselves, and to think that we can is kind of foolish. So we had classes on senior population and aging. We learned about a lot of resources and programs that we're going to be looking into. We did a Growing with Purpose class that was about Talking Rock, which is a really tiny, tiny city. And their greatest economic asset is their identity. And so the focus was on building your identity, placemaking, finding direction, making a third space. We did a downtown revitalization class, and we found that we've got a lot of allies. One is Rashida Cloud, who is our DMA representative, and she put us in touch with the Congress for New Urbanism, CNU, which is a nonprofit city design for sustainability group, and I'm really looking forward to where that progresses. Anything to add?
DMA, for those who don't know, is the DeKalb Municipal Association, which is the local DeKalb association under Georgia Municipal Association. And Rashida works full-time for GMA, running DMA. All in all, the conference was for cities less than 10,000 people, which we're on the low end of that scale. But as we learned, we are not the smallest city. There were cities there that had 100 residents. And we're all trying to figure out the same thing, but doing it in their own way. And that was just really nice to network and meet other people, and just know that we're not alone in struggling with what we're trying to figure out, how to be a sustainable and economically prudent city. And it was just great to get to spend some quality time with you, Thomas.
Talked a lot.
Yeah. All right. So before we check on any other announcements,
So Thomas and I went to a DMA event last Thursday at
Assembly.
Assembly Studios in Doraville. It was really nice. I met Rashida Cloud again. She was at the new council member training in Athens in February. It was really nice to meet local council members, commissioners, and mayors, and just find out, what MARTA is doing and how annexation is being looked at throughout the county. and how we can be included in these conversations. So I think it's really important that we keep up our network of people that we can lean on.
It was really neat when we started talking about annexation. Mayor Cobble of Stonecrest, who was running the meeting, was saying that during their city manager meetings, they were talking about timelines and expectations, and that Pine Lake had not really been part of these conversations, and that we needed help. And she called for a vote to send a consultant to us to help us figure out what step one would be of annexation. And they approved that. So we will be having a consultant to talk to us, help us figure out just the very, very basics of how to move forward with annexation, if that's even a thing that we can or want to do. So that was really neat. They also talked about legislative updates, House Bill 244, which is about cities with a revenue of less than 2.5 million being exempt from annual audits with alternative reporting for compliance, which I think was really interesting. They noted that this November election could upend a lot of things and could change things, but the property and sales tax bills are going to be challenged and put up until they finally pass. So it will be a problem we'll have to fight for a long time. They also talked about sharing services and positions between cities and IGAs, which I think Mayor Pro Tem has talked about at length for a while.
Also, HB 33, SB 33, was the topic of some conversation at Small Cities, and talking with the Associate Director of GMA that, in his opinion, it is the initial concern was it was not going to be good for small cities. Now that they've had a chance to look at it, he's not as pessimistic about it. Talked about FLOST and eHost, which I haven't really dug into to understand fully yet, but he was saying that it's not as bad as we thought. That doesn't mean it's still not going to be challenged in lawsuits, according to many articles that I've read online. So there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of knowns, and we're still figuring that out, and GMA is really keeping their eyes on that. I think from a previous DMA policy meeting with mayors that I went to, the overall feeling was if it doesn't work this time, the state Senate will pass something next time. So this is not going away property tax reform in some fashion. So I felt a little less fearful of SB 33. I'm still not sure exactly everything that it entails, and we will keep finding out more. Any other communications or announcements?
I can share. Last week, I went to Avondale Estates City Hall, and they were having a community meeting about some of their commercial/residential development, kind of in their downtown area. And I got in late. I was not super up to date as far as the details, but it was just really interesting to just hear some of the scope of that project that I think a lot of us have seen the visual change in the last couple of years, but that it's been, according to some of their representatives and people who work in the city, it's been like 15 years worth of planning and discussions and, you know, the DDA and the TAD and all of that. And they were talking about timelines in terms of budgets through 2041, which I just think is really fascinating. And, you know, thinking about, obviously, Pine Lake, our commercial district, is a much simpler and smaller scale project, but especially as Councilmember Lowers and I go into more of these meetings with the ARC and thinking about, you know, long-term development in the commercial district, that it's something that's bigger than any single council member's term. And I just really hope it's something that we can get some vision and some work into, because it's just it's a scale of project that's bigger than any single person or council or term.
So the long and the short of this is, working in government, we got to learn acronyms because there are way more than we care to know about. So before we go into adoption of the agenda of the day, given timing of things, I would love to see if you are open to shifting item number 1 under new business, the resolution R 2026-28, the 2026 property tax millage rate process, to leave that towards the end, shift that to the last one so that we can get through the initial items on the agenda and then give more time to that conversation. So is that something that council is amenable to?
Yes, sure.
Approved.
All right. Is someone then open to adopting the amended agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda of the day as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So moving then to public comment. Oh, no, adoption of the minutes. My apologies. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes from the regular meeting of April 28th, 2026 and the work session of May 14th, 2026?
I move that we adopt the minutes from April 28th and May 14th.
Thank you.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We now have an opportunity for public comment. Please come on up to the podium, adjust the microphone as needed, and introduce yourself and your residence.
Fabulous.
Not AI.
Tom Ramsey, 610 Spruce Drive. Mayor Pro Tem Goldberg, council members, I thank you for your service to our city. As a recently former council member, 2 of my final votes were, number 1, voting against a new proposed job classification and compensation package for city employees, which is a major part of your current millage rate discussion. Our city staff has been historically undercompensated, and they were certainly deserving of a regionally competitive compensation package. I voted no, only because the proposal from the city manager did not include a plan to pay for the package other than deficit spending, leading to difficult decisions that you as a council have faced these past few months. That resolution passed council by a 4-1 vote, with me being the only no vote. Council members Goldberg and Torrent, you both voted for that resolution. The second item was voting for the 2026 budget, which included the deficit spending to fund the new job classification and compensation package. I voted yes to approve that budget, even though it included deficit spending that I did not approve of. I did so because once the job classification and compensation package was approved, it was my fiduciary duty to pass a budget that would pay for it in 2026. The point of this is twofold. One is that once a council has approved a decision, even if you voted against it, you move forward and support and fund that legislation. It's your fiduciary duty as a council member. As you approach the setting of this year's millage rate, I hope that you as a council can find the courage to do your fiduciary duty and the deficit spending to pay the cost of giving our employees a fair and equitable compensation package, and raise the millage rate to cover these costs and the anticipated cost of state legislation like SB 33 that will impact our taxation flexibility in future years. Finally, I would like to say we have an intergovernmental fund of $2 million, thereabouts. Some of it has been spent, that we received last year. From what I can see, nothing has been spent out of that in the last 5 or 6 months. I'd like to see you start moving on some of those with speed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, moving on to new business. Resolution number 2026-29, the Plain MOU. Chris, is that you?
Apparently, yes, sir. This is the resolution to consider the memorandum of understanding with the Pine Lake, sorry, I can't remember the name of the acronym, forgive me. The Plain MOU for purposes of managing and coordinating the use of certain and specified city assets. This has been negotiated with the president of Plain primarily and city staff. The current incarnation is the piece that has been approved by the administration and asked by the council to approve.
Questions, clarifications?
We do.
We do then. Yes, thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt the Resolution R 2026-29, the Plain MOU?
I will move that we adopt Resolution R 2026-29, Plain Memorandum, Plain MOU.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
No,
Wait,
Mayor-
No,
Mayor
no,
Pro
sorry,
Tem, hang on.
discussion, sorry, yep, jumping
Hang
ahead.
on. Two things. One is Councilmember Torrent has indicated to me he's going to recuse, so he's going to need to leave the dais while this item is under consideration by the council. The second one is, yes, you need to allow for discussion and conversation before you call for a vote. Would you call yourself a vote?
Questions, comments, discussion?
For me, nothing additional other than what I emailed to y'all about Friday evenings, wanting to have a different arrangement than plain having free use of facilities on Friday night. I think there are multiple ways we could change that, but I think from a financial responsibility perspective and just thinking about being as tight on the budget as we can, that given that that's, you know, prime rental night and there is still cost to the city in terms of wear and tear and cleaning the facility after events, especially on a Friday, that we need to find a different way to arrange that.
Mayor, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem, if I may address that concern briefly. The extent of corporate knowledge in the city is limited at this point. What you see is based on the MOU that was done last year, which was based on the one I inherited from 2024. So we don't have much corporate or institutional knowledge beyond the 2024 understanding between Plain and the city. The other challenge we face in my conversations with the administration, and I am not presuming to speak for the city manager at all, but what I understand is that there's a lack of staff bandwidth to take on some of the scheduling pieces of this conversation, which is why this MOU continues to exist in its current form as far as who is responsible for allocating the uses on various periods of time. The city still manages the paid reservations, the acceptance of deposits and the payment for rentals. That's still handled by city staff. But the act of actually scheduling the space is the purpose of this MOU in order to not have to increase staff or to increase bandwidth on already stretched staff members for the conduct of that particular task. And I'll obviously yield to the city manager to put a finer point on that.
Just to clarify the city attorney's comments, what he has said is accurate. But after we got feedback informally through council members and email discussions, that some, maybe a majority, were uncomfortable with working with Plain, as I took it, even in an interim. We have made alternative arrangements, so we're not asking for Plain to schedule any rentals.
Thank you. That addresses my concern. I do see in the second bullet point under the City of Pine Lake will, it does say Plain will manage the reservation process for both Sunday evenings and Monday through Friday using a Google Forms app, et cetera. Can we strike that from the MOU?
Or do we need clarifying language about paid versus non-paid?
I mean, I don't think it's Plain will manage the reservation process. I have a problem with that language.
Okay.
But I'm just one person. Second bullet point, you see where the highlighted part, it says both Sunday evenings and, so
It's on
just
page-
one line above that where it says Plain will manage towards the end.
It's on page 1 of the MOU, the bottom bullet point.
So the line is Plain will manage the reservation process for both Sunday evenings and Monday through Friday using a Google Forms app, which the city will have visibility and notification of bookings.
So my question to you is just kind of, just so I make sure I'm understanding your concern, for events that are not paid rentals, like the Sunday night, there's often an AA meeting, right? Are you not comfortable with things like that?
I don't think a community organization should be booking city properties.
So
I think-
period. Okay,
But it's not that they can't use it,
right.
but that I think it opens us up to having problems, either Plain having problems with the city or the city having problems with Plain. And I would like to avoid that.
Okay.
So if a city employee could manage the reservations with the understanding that Plain gets,
Gets the same
Gets the
usage agreement.
yeah, of
okay.
course, yeah.
Got it.
Because I
Yeah,
think
thank you.
they provide a wonderful service for the community. I just would like to keep them separate.
Okay, yeah,
So there's
thank you
no-
for clarifying.
Mr. Mayor Pro
Sorry.
Tem, since the president of Plain is present, you probably need to ask if he's willing to accede to that, because the agreement as presented is what Plain's agreed to before the city council has been asked to act.
So then what we're requesting is that line be removed from, is that what you're asking?
That's what I was talking about in the emails that were going on a couple weeks ago, was having Plain removed from the bookings.
Yeah,
Whe-
and-
Whether paid or not paid.
Correct.
All, yeah,
And to
all
not-
bookings.
Right.
And to not put too fine a point on it, there was no consensus or votes taken as to those emails. It was simply a discussion process as part of the council's deliberation, which is allowed expressly by the Open Meetings Act. So since there had not been a consensus, we left that language in. Plain had asked for that language, we left it in, and now we need to complete the negotiations about what Plain's willing to do.
Okay.
So, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Happy to clarify. Thank you for having this point of discussion, Tim McLeod, President of Plain. Yeah, our understanding and our discussions were that we would solely be scheduling non-commercial, open to everyone in the community type events in the way to make sure that, as Council Member Kohlers was referring to, that we would not get in the way basically of any kind of like additional revenue that could be generated by any commercial rentals. But we also do not have the capacity to take on any like scheduling on behalf of the city. So right now the understanding is there is something that would be considered or put up as a potential public event, which Plain would decide on whether that's a yay or nay. You know, if it's a birthday, no, for instance. But if it is, say, you know, a basket weaving class, that would probably be a yes. So that's our understanding, but I'm quite happy to discuss further if there are any needs or for clarification on that point.
Questions?
I think that's what I was hoping the outcome would be.
My concern still stands as far as I'm not in favor of free use on a Friday night of the facilities.
But wouldn't paid opportunities preempt free things that would be scheduled through Plain?
That's my question, I guess, maybe for City Attorney Balch to answer based on the MOU.
That's my understanding, but of the administration's policy is that if there is a paid event that preempts a volunteer or a non-paid event.
What if the paid event, what if Plain puts something on the books for a Friday night a month in advance, and then the next week someone wants to do a paid event?
The city's
city
paid
can-
event, which would preempt the
Okay.
Unpaid event.
Okay.
So I'm curious if with this, since I believe it is on Sunday at 5 p.m., Plain is allowed to start the free booking on Sunday?
It's not well defined in the agreement. As I said, this is a legacy document that I inherited, and there's not been clear council direction about how to rectify some of the ambiguities. So I've not tried to usurp your role as the policy body to make those choices for you. But we can certainly add that additional language if that's something that the council wants to consider and Plain's willing to accede to it.
Well, it says 5 p.m. on
Oh, does
page
it?
1. That second bullet point that Councilmember Hull referenced. It says 5 p.m. I don't know.
On Sunday.
Yeah,
Yes.
starting on Sunday
So
at
my
5 p.m.
suggestion was just in terms of
keep
that
it.
is to keep that,
Right.
but also make Friday 5 p.m. instead of
Instead of 9
the
p.m.
9 p.m.
Okay.
I wonder if that's a happy medium for that, but that doesn't alleviate your concerns about not being involved at all in scheduling.
Yeah, you and I have
Yeah. Right.
separate pieces entirely.
Chief?
As far as being the primary scheduling, could we add some additional language to have the city ultimately approve? Like, they can book, but then we have to put the check mark on it so that there is some type of liaison still where we don't end up with these trip,
It is not my preference to be in opposition to the chief of police. However, the First Amendment causes all kinds of red flags and sirens and alarms going off in my head with that particular, that was the noise you were hearing. With the chief's idea that we'd be involved in any kind of approval process of events in our facilities. The facilities are limited purpose public fora. They're allowed to be used as we deem them appropriate. We do not viewpoint discriminate or use discriminate in the city by policy or by law. So there's, anytime you start putting checks and balances over this kind of formal agreement with a neighborhood association, I start getting little twitches that you don't want to watch.
Okay, thanks.
Just on that point, I'll just offer that we are quite happy to continue to tweak this and add more criteria into the screening process because Plain definitely wants this to be an efficient system. We want this to be as stress-free as possible. So if that means that we do tweak and change days, we are totally open to that and we're happy to support.
Thanks.
I would think thank you for that. I just wonder if we overcomplicate things that could be a lot simpler. Not sure what that would mean. What my bigger concern is where there is a miscommunication or a potential communication drop, where there's a rental, a feed rental comes in, and then communication doesn't always get to, or it's sent but it's not read, and there's a mix-up, which I think is what we've been dealing with. So how do we fine-tune a process so that there is not a potential for communication breakdown is more my concern about whether they do or they don't. I would be in favor of Plain being responsible for the events for the community, with the city being responsible for the paid events. My concern is more when a paid event pops up on a day that there's already a scheduled community event, how that is handled so things don't get confused. Please, can you?
We've been doing this, I think, close to 2 years, and so far, we haven't had any disasters like that. We've had several times where city events took over for the private events, like the voting, et cetera. And so there was always good communication between Ned and Plain about when those things took place. So we were able to accommodate, send out emails to everyone as well. Also, the Plain event calendar is shared with the city, so the city does have awareness of what our events are, what the Plain events are. So we also, when we started the thing, we had like a 3-month and 6 months test period where we reported back to the city how it was going, and it pretty much is self-sufficient and is going along pretty good. So I think it's running smoothly is my point of view, and I think it's going to be more refined as we move on as well. So
Thank you.
I was gonna say, to what Jeff said, Ned and I had looked at a couple of these things, and he was recommending that Plain have a second person, so that if their main person is out of town, there's a second person that's available, so when we do have these overbooks or double books or whatever.
I would agree.
I have a question about just kind of the process, since this is it sounds like this is the agreement that's already been in place the last year. At the bottom of page 1, it talks about Plain agrees to place a $100 standing deposit to the city. So is that just something that's already been given and is just available, like that's been done?
That's my understanding. You said, right,
Okay.
Colin? Yes.
Thanks.
Got a question about a completely unrelated topic. On page 3 of the MOU, about a third of the way down, Plain will install and maintain wayfinding stations, kiosks, and signs that serve to communicate with residents and visitors about the culture and history of Pine Lake, only with input and approval from City Council regarding location, design, and covenants for use. What is the historical precedent? Has this always been a role of Plain and or Seed, or is it something that this city is interested in delegating in some way?
This was a new ask from Plain to the city for this year.
My understanding is that this was the city's request. I thought I've spoken before with the chief on ideas for signs that we're in general agreement. We haven't formalized, but we were in general agreement that it could be a good idea that we would try out. But this language is not inserted by Plain. I don't take issue with it, but I actually don't know its history.
Yes, so
That's my assumption. Sorry.
I had met with Tim and Calvin, and we had talked about the Plain MOU, and I took a stab at adding some of the things we had discussed, and this is one of the things we had discussed. So anything that you see highlighted yellow is what I input into this MOU that I then sent to City Attorney Balch. And, my feeling on this bullet point is that ultimately, if Plain is a willing partner, like we should be partnering with Plain for anything that is good for the city, but we oversee everything, right? So in conjunction with, Chief Green and making sure that it's appropriate and City Council approves it in the language, right? I think it's more of a partnership.
I'm not opposed, and much like the rest of the tenure at the evening, I'm willing to give it a try and see how it works and amend if needed.
So is the idea then to do this and do it as a trial basis for 6 months, for a year? Or do we just agree on this and say this is the MOU?
No, you don't have to vote on it and say this is the MOU. Given the number of requested changes and discussions, my suggestion to you is you postpone this vote for a month. We put it on the end of June. Let me work with the Plain leadership and make sure we're all on the same page before we bring it back to the council for final adoption. Because as I said in my opening remarks, even with my senior moment in the middle of it, I did not feel I had sufficient direction from council about what the policy choices you wanted to make were in order to make some of the changes you're asking for tonight. I think I need to go back to Plains leadership, have those conversations substantively, get their concurrence, and then bring it back to you for a final vote. So if, I believe Councilwoman Lowers was the movement, if you would withdraw your motion to approve, and then a new motion to table until the regular session meeting for June, that would be my recommended action based on the conversation.
I will withdraw my motion to discuss resolution R 2026-29, the Plain MOU.
Do we have a second?
It's not necessary, the
Not necessary.
withdrawals,
Okay.
all that's required.
Then,
The next option, the next suggestion, if you follow through with my advice, is to have a motion presented to table this resolution until your regular session for June.
okay. Do we have a motion to table this for our next session in June?
I motion to table resolution R 2026-29 until our June session.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being willing to discuss this further with us.
Thanks. And just one last thing, likewise, appreciate it. This is also an opportunity to take some finer detail to look at environmental work that SEED does as part of Plain. I had been under the assumption under the current MOU that we would just notify City Council if we had any invasive cleanups or trash removals. But since that has been a point of contention in the past and you're going to discuss and vote on this later, I strongly suggest you look at that, think about what your comfort points are and what you need from SEED/Plain in terms of assurances that, you know, we're operating in line with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, Resolution R 2026-30, authorization for city manager or designee to apply for tax anticipation note. And is that Chris?
Is that still me? I thought that was the administration. This is a resolution to authorize the application for tax anticipation note. As the city manager expressed to the council at the work session, there is a cash flow shortfall for this fiscal year that requires the city to apply for short-term loan. This is an expressly authorized borrowing that is approved in the Georgia Constitution. It requires that we repay the note in its entirety plus interest and all costs and fees from the tax receipts that you will receive at the end of this year. So the goal here is to stem the short-term cash flow. It caps the borrowing at $500,000. It caps the fees that are applied, and it caps the allowed interest rate. If any of those things change, then the council's express authorization is withdrawn. So if the borrowing needs to be more than 500, it's withdrawn. If the interest rate goes over, I think it's 5%, it's withdrawn. And if the fees, the issuance fees are in excess of what's authorized, then the authorization is withdrawn, just to be clear.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve Resolution R 2026-30.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
It's necessary.
It's how city money moves.
I would just say it is not the first time the city of Pine Lake has done that. So in the past, we have used tax anticipation loans as a process given the cycle of when we receive funding. Stanley, when is, just information for the residents, the cycle in terms of property tax is our majority of our income coming in. That comes in at what time? When it's
September, the end of September.
So basically our shortfall months are all of spring and part of summer?
Yeah, pretty much just the summer. So we were projecting basically May, June, July, August, and September. The city spends with the $1.5 million budget, roughly $100,000 per month. And summer's been our really dry months as far as getting revenues in. We've got multiple sources, but property tax is by far the greater one, and it's just the cycle that's set. But other cities in DeKalb County itself regularly use TAN, a cash flow situation. I mean, we have started working on this after the finance director discussed it with you at the work session. It has not gone according to our plan. Our custodial bank, Truist, has not been receptive, so that's been very disappointing. So part of what the resolution allows is working with the financial advisor and bond counsel. I mean, it is a note, simpler note as far as, you know, revenue bonds or general obligation bonds go, so we're having to work outside of our usual financial institution, and that is going to involve having a financial advisor, which preliminarily we've already started working with one, but more than likely we will also be bringing back to you, depending on how that process goes, that we move to a better partner as far as financial institutions.
And then, City Manager Hawthorne, if I understood correctly, Truist didn't want to work with us because it was too small an amount?
Said we were too small.
So,
I mean, I did have information and questioned them. We're not as large as Clarkston, but Clarkston certainly is a small city, but they had initially told us that their minimum is $2 million, and in researching Clarkston that requested from Truist last year, it was several $100,000, similar to our request. So they didn't have a good answer for that one.
thank you. Other questions? All right, can we take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Thank you. Moving on to Resolution R 2026-31, notification of intent, DeKalb County Cooperation Agreement. City Manager Hawthorne.
Yes, if you haven't had a chance to review this, there are some sources of funds, grants in effect, that come through the federal government that are very well known. They go by acronyms, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG grants, to support basically what it says, community development. Another is HOME, which essentially supports housing needs of communities and trying to get affordable housing and helping residents, neighbors with, in some cases, renovations or even first-time home buyer programs. Pine Lake size, as well as many cities, the red tape of the federal government is immense. And so one of the tools that's available, not only through DeKalb County, there is such a program, such as small cities potentially doing it on our own. Traditionally, the city has partnered with DeKalb County, who annually makes available the funds that the county receives on behalf of the county, as well as cities who don't have their own program to participate in this program. This is simply a requirement of the Housing and Urban Development Department of the federal government that a city at the end of the cycle, which is 3 years, that they indicate formally whether they want to renew their agreement or cancel their agreement, in this case with DeKalb County. So this is pretty much a formality, but we do have a timeline that this meeting affords us our last chance to just give that formal indication. So it's really not changing anything. We have participated in the program before. The program is so tedious, such as Pine Lake has realized, funding that probably its most recent funding up through CDBG, we ended up rejecting the funds because of, as I understand it, I think this was in 2024 before I got here, the requirements of the public bidding that would have been necessary that would have actually set back, I think, what was the renovation or replacement of the pedestrian bridges around the lake.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'd like clarification, Mr. Hawthorne, please, on the second to last paragraph from Lorraine Cochran Johnson. It says, however, your city will waive its individual entitlement to CDBG and home funds. Additionally, the city of Pine Lake will not be eligible to apply for grants under the Small Cities State CDBG programs or enter into consortium agreement with any other local entity for funding for the duration of the agreement.
Yes, and that's and that's true because the city has those choices of programs to participate in to access the same set of funds that come from HUD, and just traditionally the city has chosen to work with the county as opposed to those other optional programs.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we accept resolution R 2026-31.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Resolution R 2026-32, a budget amendment for the city management recruitment services. Stanley, I believe this is you.
This is me as well.
Okay.
If I can recommend, Mayor Pro Tem, if you would take items 5 and 6 together, because they are, the votes will need to be separate, but you can do the discussion together. The 2026-32 is a budget amendment to provide funding to pay for the agreement, which is item 6. The cost of the city manager recruitment services agreement is $18,000. The budget amendment moves $18,000 from your reserve funds into the operating account for professional services, and then the professional services line item funds the application, the actual services agreement, which is 26-33. With the city manager's notice to the city that he will not be renewing his agreement in January, the mission of finding the next city manager needs to begin. There is a national conference for which people looking for city manager jobs occur in September. So we need to get the consultant on board and the process started internally so that we can be ready and our solicitation can be public by the time of that conference in September. So the goal here is to both have the funds transferred to the operating account, do that in advance of starting the contract, and then bringing the contractor on board to be available. We have let Sumter know that this item is on the agenda tonight and have asked that they be here at your next work session to participate in executive session to discuss this process and how it will work logistically. That is a personnel matter, so it is part of the exclusions that are allowed under the Open Meetings Act, so it's not an illegal meeting. The goal here is to make sure that the city is best prepared to provide its citizens with the next management team that will be necessary in January.
Thank you, sir. Do we have, so we're going to vote on these two separately, so let's take number 5, resolution R 2026.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to mention something before we actually vote on these, because there's a typo. And just for the sake of it's the tiniest thing, but if you look at the two resolutions on the top right, they both say R 2026-32. So just for the sake of nitpicky documentation, I'm assuming the second one needs to be 33. But just so somebody can make a note of it.
Thank you for calling that out. The resolution allows us to fix technical errors
Okay,
like
good.
that. So Either Ned or myself would have figured it out at some point, but thank you for pointing it out. We'll get it fixed in advance.
Yeah, I just don't want to vote on it and then not be able to move. Okay, thanks.
There's a CYA line that you will see in every resolution and document I prepare for y'all that allows us to make those changes because it happens too
Yeah,
often that I
for
fat
sure.
finger a key.
For sure. Thanks.
Thank you for catching such a small detail, my gosh. So, Resolution R 2026-32, Budget Amendment, City Management Recruitment Services. Do we have a motion to approve?
I will move that we approve Resolution R 2026-32, the budget amendment relevant to the city manager recruitment services.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is passed. Now we will take Resolution R 2026-33, the agreement for city management recruitment services with Sumter Local Government Consulting. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve R 2026-33.
And I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Thank you. Moving on to Resolution R 2026-34, Declaration of Surplus Vehicles from the Police Department. Chief?
Evening, City Council, City Manager. This resolution is basically formality. This resolution is requesting that council deem the vehicles notated as surplus, after which time they will be sold on Gov Deals. They have been recently decommissioned, and you guys in your packets have a list of some of the reoccurring issues and the financial hardship for those vehicles. So at this time, I ask that you guys would approve the declaration of deeming these vehicles surplus.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I motion that we pass Resolution R 2026-34.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? I do have to say, I noticed one of the cars was parked for a while on, I believe, Dahlia. And
That's part of our strategic slow down, wrong way initiative.
it worked. Made me stop at every stop sign.
I saw you. I saw you.
And also, just FYI, I did see an officer on Ridge yesterday pulling someone over, which I have not seen in years, and I just appreciate that.
We were looking for you.
I was hiding. All right, motion to a vote. All those in favor? For Resolution R 2026-34, Declaration Surplus Vehicles for the PD.
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. And moving on to Resolution R 2026-35, the 2026 Pine Lake swimming season. Chief, is that you?
I guess it is. I'm going freestyle. As you all know, a couple years ago, we had decided that we would open the swim season by resolution, and we have checked our list and checked it twice, and I think we are ready to go forward with opening up the beach as prescribed the weekend after Memorial Day. What
Thank-
say you?
Do we have a motion?
I have a question. I'm not clear as to, well, like, we motioned and then had discussion, but then just now yeah.
I move that we accept Resolution R 2026-35. And then we'll do
Great.
discussion.
Super.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Discussion?
My question is just on the resource impact. I see that it lists the part-time beach monitor. I'm just curious, I know that staff has done has the funding, but just to include what the resource impact is for the water testing? Can that be something that's?
We don't have the updated information for that.
Okay.
I know what we did was, because there is, we've had a lot of issues with water quality in this area, and because we are in the middle of a drought, we have started the testing just a little bit earlier. But as
Okay.
soon as I get those numbers, I'll go ahead and send it to you guys with an updated budget impact.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, it was my understanding that swim season would begin tomorrow.
Technically, it's the weekend. I think the verbiage is the Saturday after Memorial Day weekend. The information I sent you was that we will start our official staging on Wednesday, which is to install the buoys, compliments of you, and bring down all of the other equipment for the beach house. I mean, for the beach season.
And so that will still happen tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Copeland and the creek don't rise.
My question is about, do we have a beach monitor?
Yes, sir. We posted it on the, Ned was so kind as to post the availability on our website. We did, we only got 2 responses, and they end up being from our, some students we used in previous year who are familiar with the city, with the lake. They've had a couple of situations where they did an amazing job with problem solving. And we are ready with them. Just printed out their IDs this morning. So we're ready to rock and roll.
Glad to hear that.
So, I take it the water has been tested, but I'm concerned with all the rain that we've had. A lot of times, that's when the E. coli counts go up.
That's correct. That's why I'm glad that we're opening up this weekend. I have to get with Mr. Kendrick and see exactly when they're scheduled to come out again. But we were just looking for those results today to present to you guys. But I guess with the holiday weekend, it kind of pushed us back a day.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Kendrick can shed a little more light this evening based on an email that I saw from him. Can you just tell council what you know, Mr. Kendrick, based on the rain events or whatever?
Yeah, we tested,
Mr. Kendrick.
oh, sorry.
We're informal, but not that informal.
Good afternoon. We normally test every Monday with hopes to have the results back by Thursday. So we could post, for swimming in the weekends. But this week we we tested Tuesday, this morning. So hopefully we'll expedite and still have them back by this Thursday. But we started testing approximately 2 weeks ago, and we haven't, our threshold for not swimming is 200 MPNs per 100 milliliters. So the first test was 62, second was 114, and you are correct about the additional rain having an effect on additional E. coli levels. But we'll just have to see what this one comes back as in order to, the last couple of years swim season, we did have to not swim the first weekend because of elevated levels. But partly that was because the waterfowl were right there in that area, but we've kind of mitigated that, so hopefully we won't have that problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, I think at one time you had mentioned recently you were going to have some additional signage for the beach.
Yes, sir. We've been, the last couple days, I think one of you guys noticed, we just trying to pull some additional signage, and not to become Sign Lake, but to be a little more strategic with it, with our posting and our signage. We're looking at some different posting as far as the water counting specifically, just so people can see prior to actually getting down to the lake, and it's not in the right of way. We've been trying to do a big push on getting signs and all kind of other stuff out of the right of way.
I wonder if we could do a flag system, like what Florida does when there's like dangerous creatures in the water, like raise a flag if the
That's actually a great idea.
counts are too high.
Could they be the same color as the shark flags, just so people are like, what do you mean, when it's actually microorganisms?
Who knows what's in that lake?
Or we can go with the basic red,
Red.
Okay.
yellow, and, you know.
Little
Is-
floating fin.
Skull and crossbones?
Yeah, no.
No,
Okay.
too much.
But I like that idea. Keep in mind that whatever we do, we have to be sure to transfer that information onto the website, because a lot of people have already gone to our website. I'm in the process of getting with Ned to sort of cleanse the website of different information that's been there for so long, but it's not true. And then people do like this, and they say, well, I saw it on the website. So all of that is in process. So just keep in mind, whatever we put out is gonna be something that's gonna be transferred to our website.
Other questions, comments for discussion? All right, we ready for a vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
I
Aye. It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we circle back to Resolution R 2026-28, the 2026 property tax millage rate process. So City Manager Hawthorne,
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and let me apologize for my hoarseness. I think I indicated to you when we met last Wednesday previewing the agenda that I had a virus of some sort, and it hasn't completely gone away. So hopefully I won't lose my voice while I'm talking due to the coughing. But this is an important agenda item, of course, and one that I think we've been preparing for, probably when you didn't even fully recognize as a new council, largely, that I was prepping, educating towards a decision that hadn't been made from an administrative standpoint, because I consider when I'm providing educational information to the council, I'm also learning myself through research and analysis. And this is kind of the climax, I guess you could say, from my study and review when talking to you over the last several months of where we need to be. But I will say that my not duty is done, but it is time to put this in the hand of the council, and whatever decision that you make this evening is not final. That would be antithetical to the process that is provided through state statute, the processes laid out by property appraiser, tax commissioner's office, because there are some formalities that are still ahead that are, as you talk about on issues, including the council calendar, for instance, wanting to ensure that the public has access. What the process is intended to allow for is not leaving it to the discretion of individual local governments, but this is the very tedious, strenuous even process that is required by all local governments that are taxing authorities, from school board to the counties to cities and so forth. And any misstep that we make, because it is also important, could put us back at the starting point. So a lot of what we're recommending to you has factored those steps that are in. It doesn't mean that there's not flexibility, but we will point out those things that should you differ from others. The schedule, certainly the tentative tax millage itself, you've got maximum flexibility, but we will, between me and the city attorney, will kind of give you some safeguards. But we've tried to be diligent in moving ahead. Now, with Ned out this evening. We are limited technologically because we wanted to keep it simple for his new assistant. He could have handled a lot more because I've seen him at work, but we wanted to keep it very basic. So I'm going to be largely talking from notes. I don't have a long presentation. It will be pretty concise. I'm going to summarize the CAM, the resolution that the city attorney has prepared, and talk at a pretty high level from some of the reference materials that you have before you, because it is largely review information. But one of the reasons that I thought the long list of attachments was important is it's important that our neighbors are also able to keep up. So while we've given them the thesis, in effect, of things that we've talked about over the last several months as we have the public hearings, and the number of public hearings is still to be decided. We're assuming 3, but it could be as little as 1, depending on your decision. But however many that we have, it will be community centric. Now that we've got a good solid finance director, he's already preparing some graphics, some things that will simplify the information for the public in particular, but I know will also be handy for you too, as you have the next month or so, based on the tentative schedule to determine where you're individually going to be on this important issue that really does get to the essence of what we've been talking about, the sustainability of Pine Lake. But let me start with the CAM, and while it won't be projected up, I think you'll be able to follow me as I point out different documents that are all in your packet. So on May 15th, we did receive the detailed determination of the tax commissioners, or from the tax commissioner's office, of what assessment values look like in Pine Lake. It's referred to as the property tax digest, that basically takes all of the parcels and properties within a community and categorizes them according to the type of property that it is, whether commercial, industrial, of course residential, and then some other categories such as utilities, that those properties are also valued. And all of that detail that you have, but now isn't the time, I think, to focus on all of that tedious detail that we shared with you, because quite frankly, that is intended for professional staffs across the county. And not only do we receive information, but they train us each year. We have sessions, all of the cities and their staff going through all of this information. And any numbers that we've given you have been cross-checked by the tax commissioner's office. They're a great check in the system, and that's all in the spirit of making sure that we don't have to redo. So I presented to you the numbers under the background. Too many numbers, I know, but you know, for a summary, it's probably sufficient. The bottom line is that the gross digest for 2026, the cycle that we're in, is $47.3 million. that compares to the gross digest in 2025 of $48.5 million. This is very atypical for Pine Lake. Over the last 10 years, as I've shown you in an analysis, Pine Lake has gone up, way up, which is a good thing, and some might see it as a bad thing, increases the wealth of people who have invested in their properties. Usually there's a tax that goes with that, that if you left the millage the same, if the value increases, then your taxes are going to go up. And over the last 10 years, that has been balanced by councils because for most of the last 10 years, despite the recent increase to 19.4, the property tax millage came down from as high as 23 mills in over 10 years to as low as 16 point something mills, and then 2 years ago it was increased to 19.4. But it's still lower today than it was 10 years ago. So the anomaly was this year, the overall tax digest decreased 2.4%. Inside the numbered sum, and I think this was the work of the past council and a resolution that they passed, and this council being the recipient and the, I guess, interrogator of when that resolution asked for the tax assessor, property appraiser to actually come and talk to council. You all asked some good questions, presented some data points. Mr. Hicks promised that he would follow up, and while he didn't come back and say to us, we listened to your council. All of a sudden, our commercial base shot up 20%, and that had been the big issue, while residential had gone up all of these years, while commercial either declined or stayed the same. So all of a sudden, 20% increase in commercial properties, and an actual 6 point something reduction in residential properties. So automatically, all things staying even, 19.4 mills, that is tax relief to residential owners. May not stay that way because governing body still has the authority of adjusting the millage rate to at least keep us even or to provide for a greater need and capacity of running the government. So we have a it's simple, but it's complex, something that is known as the rollback rate. So while our tax millage rate on the books is 19.4 mills, this adjustment, this reduction in the valuation automatically changes that number based on what does it take to keep you status quo, getting the same amount of tax revenue as the prior year. So in Pine Lake, what has happened, I'm going to just use the 19.4 as an example, with the increases that we've had consistently year after year, that 19.4 would automatically go down. It would be reduced, a lower tax rate. This year, because of the overall reduction, it does just the opposite. It goes up. And so the 19.957 that I refer to as the rollback rate is where we actually are to maintain the same level of revenue. We're just right at 20 mills, if you round it off. And so we have the issue of what are the needs of Pine Lake, and the needs are so fundamentally important. And I don't do this to exaggerate or to make this more dramatic than it is. But this question of where it is will determine that question we've been asking, the short-term sustainability of Pine Lake. And I'll get more into that as I go on. But then, as was mentioned earlier, we also have some outstanding issues of the legislature having taken on not just the property tax, which is primarily what funds local governments, and then you have those taxes that primarily fund the state government, income tax, sales tax, that, you know, they've been making some changes and giving tax relief. I just got in the mail on Friday, email, an unexpected tax refund on income tax. I couldn't see in my bank what it was, but I was very curious. I finally got to see it today, but there was some tax relief. So I think, despite some things that we don't have control of on a taxation basis, federal government, state government, local government, they want to provide some relief to its constituencies. Now, with that said, we're at the very bottom of the totem pole. We have less resources. Ours are static, being the property tax, particularly for Pine Lake, whereas these greater governments who have provided some tax relief are able to do more. Kind of hope that it balances out, given that we're facing an issue of sustainability of services for Pine Lake, and what does the Pine Lake community expect. Now, the tentative millage that your city manager is recommending, and as I told you at the last meeting, I don't build these great cushions. And so with my recommendation, keep in mind that you're not limited to it. You can increase it. You can reduce it. But going forward, when you make final decisions, you won't have all of those options. You can only reduce. So where you set today is intended to give you maximum flexibility for decisions in the future. I've been speaking to you about roughly a meal equals 50,000. If you look at the basic reason why we're looking at an increase this year, and I've made 2 previous recommendations of not increasing the millage. When we did the 2025 amended budget, I recommended leaving it as it was, and for 2026, the same. But when the rubber meets the road, I've got to be responsible as a city manager, so I don't take this lightly. And something very significant happened that, again, you share in the work that was started by the previous city council. But this is the fundamental issue. We were out of compliance with the city charter. Call it an unfunded mandate, because it's been in the charter for many, many years. Not a class and pay study, but a class and pay system. It's been required for all of these years, and we've not complied. And so now we've taken responsibility, and we did it scientifically, we did it objectively, and it is what it is. so now we have a system that we have to support if we want to operate as a true city, because you can't do it without your employees. And you certainly can't do it in the face of having the scientifically based study that allows for a system. And you've heard me, and I know people have gotten tired of me talking about it, but it is just so fundamental. But that is where we are. It's the reason that we are where we are. And what it requires is a millage adjustment of 3.868 mills based on the reduced valuation. I think my estimate to you, I think maybe it was Councilmember Hull, asked the question, what are you thinking? And I said probably 3.5 mills. And then we got all of the actual results, and with the rounding, it was a little more than the 3.5. Now, under resource impact, I just want to go over with you the specific numbers of what I just kind of summarized. If we leave the millage rate at 19.4, and if you look at that last column, it's in red, we lose revenue, roughly $22,000. If we go with the automatic adjustment of 19.957 mills, now, if I had done this as opposed to the finance director checking my numbers, that would show as a 0. But Stephen crunches all the way down to everything that needs to be considered. So it's not just reassessed value, but say new construction or new development that might have occurred. So it's slightly over 0. This is $3,500. And then the number that I have recommended to you, 23.825, you note that 182,787. I would like for you not to memorize that exact number, but round it up, because I'm going to come quickly to a number that hopefully you can relate up to. So I have said that the basis of that millage adjustment is due to the budget that was approved, including the class and compensation system, and then the anticipation that we don't know of SB 33 or other legislation. Let me just give a footnote to something that the Mayor Pro Tem said, and me and him had this conversation already after he had shared with me, you know, some of the conference information and people that he had spoken with. SB 33 isn't all bad. Now, what's in the future, we don't know. But based on the legislation that we've got now, SB 33, I think, offers some silver lining for Pine Lake in particular. I've already asked the finance director, probably in his next strategic performance report, and certainly at the work session, which will likely, or maybe the public hearing, to go into that. And, you know, the day after, I think it was the morning after our last meeting, I woke up, and I get up early, 6 a.m., and he stays up late, and he gets up early. And 10 minutes earlier, I think he had sent me an email, his recitation on, this is what you should know about my understanding of SB 33. So it written me a page full of stuff. So he's going to be talking about that more. The silver lining, as I see it at this point, what I understand, is with SB 33 being passed and it providing for no opt-out provision, something that the council approved last year to the House bill. Every city is now opted in to the 3% or inflationary cap on property tax. No more 30% increases that homesteaders will be faced with in any given year, such as Pine Lake, or 7% or 10% or whatever it is. So that's tax relief, more tax relief that has been authorized, making it more manageable. And the importance of that, you know, even as we weren't necessarily supporting that type of legislation, is part of the issues that has scared Pine Lake residents, property owners, is each year not knowing what the effect was going to be. And it has been significant for Pine Lake residents. Now there's some level of control. Now, with being opted in, there's a sales tax option, a couple of sales tax options. And this will have to go through the county, and it will have to be by referendum. There is what is known as FLOSS. I've studied the acronym, but I don't want to get started like the city attorney would claim. So FLOSS allows cities to get an additional, I believe it's 1%. If it goes according to the formula that we have for SPLOSS, which doesn't benefit our general fund, you're talking about $150,000 roughly. And there aren't any limitations as I understand it. We put it out there, it's approved, and we could have an instant new major source to help with taxation in Pine Lake that doesn't fall on the neighbors of Pine Lake solely. Spread out, you know, people who come in and benefit and spend money, tourists in the community. The other option that will also be available is what is called LHOST, local, and whatever that means. But that one is purely if a local government increases the property tax on its residents, as I understand even through millage, or I should say reduces the property tax, it can be made up dollar for dollar through this LHOST, but that one is more limited. So more to come on that, but for this year, maybe it wasn't so bad at all, maybe to our benefit. Now, there are a couple of attachments that I want to go over with you. I want to go over in some detail the resolution so you know exactly what you approved. But I want to remind you of, and this is listed as an attachment, the 2026 budget, the general fund summary, and the table of organization. And as I get to those, and it won't take me long, I think it will make some sense to you. And then there were these long lists of what I called articles that came since February from strategic performance reports that I just listed them, pulled them exactly from the strategic performance reports. You know, maybe a shortcut for you. You've got access to the SPRs. More importantly, if neighbors want to know why are we here, that they have a chance to look at what we have been studying over the last 4 or 5 months. And I quickly want to just go through these. The professionalization of city government, or I'm sorry, to start with, the council manager form of government has impacted our resources. the professionalizing of city government. A real low-hanging example that we can look at, having a professional finance department that's still growing. You being able to see some of the disadvantages that administration has had, not only over the last year, but over past years. We don't have numbers. We don't get to see what's going on to be able to keep up and make a comparison. And Stephen is working hard on it, but it's still not available. I will tell you that in talking about the TAN, for instance, the tax anticipation note, financial advisor required some pretty basic information. 2025, this year, what are you spending each month? What's coming in? Cash flow analysis. Some of you have requested that. And it has held up our being able to get that information to financial advisor. Financial advisor called me on Friday and said, when are we going to get this? Because he was hoping to come to you tonight and present what he had, hopefully a much lower interest rate than you allowed for tonight. But we've not been able to give him the numbers yet. I didn't talk to Stephen today, but we kind of put, it's got to be today that those numbers are ready. I'll know tomorrow morning. But it's important for us to operate as we should, and then there are other areas that cost more if we're truly going to be a professional city. We have sustainable development plans. It's not just financial, economic development, you know, what this community really wants to be, an arts community, all things to sustain us. And we've not activated those, you know, over the last few years. I've talked about the class and pay system that's thoroughly described in these reports. We've talked about options to ensure financial sustainability. We looked at it from kind of a SWOT analysis, strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and threats. And we focused in on some areas such as the strength of property tax, a threat to different tax legislation that's going on, a structurally imbalanced budget, which is where we are. We're not structurally imbalanced if sound governmental decisions are made with the strength that we know about and control property tax. My recommendation, my opinion. Municipal annexation, we've been talking about that for the last 6 or 7 months, starting with the past council. Probably every SPR, every presentation that I've made to you, you know, we've been exploring that possibility, included as, you know, one of the options I know in the survey that we're looking at in our comprehensive plan. And I've made my recommendation that the option that is most realistic to solve our sustainability issue for now and the foreseeable future, it comes down to the property tax. I'm not recommending moving ahead with municipal annexation. That's something that can certainly be looked at for the future. There's a lot that's involved, but there is a question of, is it something that the community really wants? Pine Lake was purposely developed as the small community that it is. And there's something to be credited to the founders and what they saw and what they wanted. That has persevered over many years at this point and has shown itself to be positive in how the wealth of the property of the city as owned by property owners has sustained and even increased. I've also provided you with historical budget variances and then the process that we're in today. resolution itself, what does it provide for? I can refer you to that. Chris does summarize in the whereas clauses the information that I shared with him of what would be my recommendation. The 23.825 mills tentatively set, a 3.868 mills increase equal to about a 19.38%, higher than the current rollback rate of 19.957. Chris makes it a point in the last whereas, and I think this is important, because you'll be voting on this, whereas the city council desires to preserve its options and hear from the public about spending priorities and taxation policy for fiscal year 2026, which will be funded by taxes received by the end of 2026. The schedule that we have recommended, 3 public hearings will be required if you increase the millage rate above 19.957 tentatively set. We've tried to keep it simple to meet the requirements by aligning it with your regular schedule. Your next work session is June 9th, so we're recommending a public hearing that would begin at 11 a.m. Your regular work session begins at 6 p.m., so we're recommending that the public hearing be held at that time at 6 p.m. And then your regular meeting for June is on June 30th, with public hearings to begin at 7 p.m. So with those meeting the requirements, it's the easiest schedule that we could come up with, but you have the option of changing those or adding to those if you choose. And then the actual resolution, and I want to read verbatim what the city attorney has summarized. Be it further resolved that the governing authority of the city of Pine Lake has made no decision about what final millage rate may be adopted by the governing authority through this resolution, and is only providing notice to the public of its current options being considered, of its intent to preserve the option to preserve and protect the fiscal health of the city, and to advise the citizens and residents of Pine Lake of their opportunity to be heard in response to these options. You have a general fund summary, a page or 2 over, that captures what was approved by the previous city council. And I'll focus on 2026, even though a comparison is made to 2025. But the page is divided half and half, in effect, of revenues and expenditures. Expenditures showing on the lower half. The total current revenue that we've projected was 1.328 million in order to balance to the overall budget of 1.52 million. Previous city council approved, upon my recommendation, the use of fund balance of $191,962. So as you think back to that number that I asked you to memorize from the CAM, the number was 182,000. So getting to that 182,000, this number was the target. Not exactly, but the city has always used a portion of fund balance, at least in the last several years, to balance. And so having a small amount that's dependent on fund balance, as long as it's for non-recurring sources, it's perfectly appropriate. Also keep in mind that you approved this evening, and we're still dealing with 2026. This is the budget that you amended. You added 18,000 to this number to fund your search for city manager. I'm going to deal with the appropriations. If you could next find in your packet, I included the table of organization. And this is how I want to kind of break down what we're dealing with, because certainly there are other options. One that has been raised is, you know, maybe reducing operations, reducing expenditures. Being a local government, a city, there are certain things that are required. When you look at our table of organization, and it starts with those first two pieces of the puzzle at the top, City of Pine Lake Neighbors and the City Council. And then you look at that next row, City Clerk, City Manager, and City Attorney. Those are all charter provided. That's basically why the charter exists. And if there's anything that's required based on the charter that we have, these are the charter provided roles of government for being the City of Pine Lake organization. On December 31st, 2024, the day before I started, all three of those charter appointed positions, City Clerk, City Manager, and City Attorney, were vacant. They were quickly filled by the first meeting in January 2025, or actually, they were approved at the last meeting in December, I believe, 2024. And then you have what makes up the city. When you talk about city operations, many of these are required services as a city. And I want to start from the left and to go to the right. General government and what is captured under general government. Strategic communications, purchasing and contract administration, information resources, really information technology, inspections and permits and planning. Some of those are core, required city services. You see Ned Dagenhart has put as the overseer, as the doer of those functions. That's a one-person department. So if we were to discontinue even a portion of these in the hopes of saving something, you've only got one staff person dedicated to these, and you all know Ned's critical role. Public Works for operations and maintenance, engineering, lake and stormwater, environment, green space, facilities, capital improvements. Capital improvements being a big one. How do we make that happen? You've got 2 staff people that are dedicated full-time to those functions. You've got the director that we never had before, professionalizing the government. And you've got 1 full-time maintenance person. And he has a seasonal employee that he brings on. But that's it. So for the administration, for maintenance, work, you've got 1 staff person apiece. Public safety, you've got police operations, law enforcement, emergency and disaster operations. The chief has on my desk an emergency operations plan that we talked about last fall at the planning retreat that we're waiting to bring up to you. We're in the disaster season. And code compliance. Every police department doesn't handle that. So you want to know the resources of our police department. Sometimes we don't appreciate what we actually have. You've got 1 chief, you've got 1 lieutenant, and you've got 2, these are in transition, that the chief uses as officers, corporals, and she asked you for a sergeant position. But as far as paid staff, those are the 4 positions. Then she's got an administrative assistant as well, but for the core functions, that's it, and that's a part-time position. and how the chief runs that department, which I haven't seen in other places to the magnitude that she does it. She relies on free volunteer reserve officers. That's how she gets the job done. You've got the municipal court that's required if you're gonna be a city. You know, you're gonna have people on the streets and other violations that potentially happen. So you've got judicial support that the court administrator provides. You've got the non-judicial operations, and you've got clerk services. You've got one staff person that takes care of that. Finance is new. We've done finance, but it hasn't been real finance, which covers accounting, budgeting, treasury and investments, $2 million. We haven't been able to invest. Debt service, enterprise resource planning. We've got a sophisticated system, but we haven't had anybody to run it, to get it set up. And what do we have now? We've got less than a half-time contractual position. He devotes about a day and a half to Pine Lake, because that's what the contract provides for. And so we still can't get caught up. So if you're talking about reducing, I've already looked pretty carefully at it and did reduce. The 2026 budget is lesser than the 2025 budget. So that's where we are. And at this point, very candidly, our options are limited. I know that this council is sensitive to our neighbors, and it's the last thing that you want to do. But you'll have the next several weeks to hear from neighbors. Now, I haven't been keeping count, but a few people so far that have come up and spoke early on this subject have expressed, you know, given the option of being something lesser than Pine Lake, we understand. Thank you. Welcome any questions.
Thank you, City Manager Hawthorne. Do we have any questions?
With the jump in millage, was that 4.5%, 5.5? 5.5 points. Is that taking anything out of the general fund, or is that just entirely being on the backs of residents?
I would say what was taken out of the general fund was done in the proposed budget. As an example, the council approved a whole new chapter for public nuisances. In fact, last year, this time, you all were going through, those of you that run council, the hundreds of pages and deliberating. You know, we want the community to look better. We want it to be safer. And one of the things that I put in that 2025 budget was $50,000 for code enforcement, you know, to be able to follow up. Things such as even short-term rentals. But in order to balance, that was something that was taken out. I've given you a summary of everything that was reduced. I think I sent one of those SPR reports. But yeah, I would say it's been squeezed already.
I guess my question was, if we raise our millage 20%, will that mean that we will not have to take out, we will not have to be in deficit spending?
Correct.
And if we do not raise it to that amount, it would all have to come out of the general fund, what we don't raise the millage to?
Yes. So that's one of the reasons why I went over the table of organization. You know, we don't have fat. There's not any cushion, and most of what we spend money on is for personnel and contractual services.
Other questions?
I have a few. Just really quick logistically, the hearing, proposed times, how does that work as far as, does the work session get started later? Like, how does that?
Yeah, we will structure it and give the Mayor Pro Tem, and I've already had this discussion with Tim. We will give him the notes, but my recommendation, so for the 11 a.m. on June 9th,
Mm-hmm.
right now that is strictly scheduled as a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
If some other business needs to take place, we have the ability to also make it a special meeting.
Okay.
For instance, if there was something untanned that we needed to update you on, or to get, you know, some additional authority,
Mm-hmm.
I have looked at June 9th, either 11 a.m. or at 6 p.m. as a special meeting possibility. So 11 a.m. is strictly public hearing at this point. I will tell you, last year, as I recall, the public hearing, Councilmember Ramsey is still here, and he'll remember this. It was a very interactive session. It wasn't the typical, you know, come and talk and then we'll get back to you later. The council was very sensitive, so there was a lot of engagement by the council as public had questions. And certainly at an 11 a.m. session devoted fully, you could devote as much time as you wanted. For the 6 p.m. on June 9th, as is tentatively scheduled, our recommendation is to do it first, because the requirements are there has to be a session between 11 a.m. and noon. And then there has to be a session between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. So for June 9th, we would recommend, let's meet at 6 p.m. on June 9th. Let's get it out of the way. I mean, to start at that time. And then the June 30th, your meeting will start at 6, but in being sensitive to some of the discussions that you've been having, you know, some of our neighbors can't necessarily get here by 6 p.m. We wanted to schedule a session for 7 p.m. right on the nose. So the Mayor Pro Tem, with the assistance of the city clerk, would be monitoring, and wherever we were in the agenda at 7, or maybe 6:58, we would give him a clue, start the public hearing in the next minute or two.
Okay, thank you. I just to kind of anticipate if people are confused, seeing that on the calendar. My other question, I don't think it's necessary to get into the nitty-gritty of it tonight, but on your summary, so it's Exhibit 1, the one you were just talking about.
Budget summary?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing the 2025 and 2026. I would love at a later point in June or whatever it is, under the uses of funds and the appropriations, just looking at the change with court, public safety, public works, and recreation. Like, some of those are changing a lot, some of them are not changing. I would just love just asking you now to get a little more info on that,
Yes.
just out of curiosity.
And that is coming, because one of the things, you know, as I've talked about the class and comp study, that amount was approved as this one lump sum, and that was just put in administration, for instance. But then the council gave us authority at the appropriate time to take those numbers and put them in the appropriate department. So
Okay.
we've got to have that discussion with you.
Okay, great, so that's coming. And then my last question, people are probably gonna get upset, but just for the sake of what feels like due diligence to me, is you said earlier that you are not the kind of person who puts in a lot of buffer. And since I'm new to all of this, do you recommend or what is typically done in terms of if 23.825 is as our proposed rate, not the final rate, if that is with not a lot of buffer, is there any reason to pass tonight something that does have more of a buffer? Right? Like, I don't know, you know, you're the experienced one, so.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like I'm passing the mantle on to you, and I try to present it as honestly and candidly as I can. You as a governing body, down to individual members, in my opinion, you should want maximum flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because the picture could be worse than I've analyzed and shown to you. You may think of something, you know, 6 months from now that you wish had been factored in. And this example just occurred to me. You know, the city manager search itself. You acted on one of the proposals, but not on another one, such as the interim. And you can quickly, you know, determine, well, we don't want to go down that route, but if that became necessary, potentially that's a higher cost, maybe with some overhead, or maybe there's some project. You know, we were talking about the $20,000 that came. Maybe some other grant sources in order to do that. You know, in the way that that the community really will really appreciate. And so you give yourself some wiggle room. You'll recall information that the Mayor Pro Tem shared with Clarkston, which was probably one of the early communities. You know, they put out their 40%. You know, that's what we're looking at. Are they really going to be looking at 40%? I doubt it. And so from a strategic political standpoint, that's your call. I certainly could have put in, you know, a 30% increase, really wanting it to be closer to 18%. My number is the minimum flexibility that I think is prudent for where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
More of a comment. We'll see if it turns into a question. But just to summarize what we've been gnawing on for the past month and what you reiterated tonight. So for the first part, we need to address the change in budget that was approved at the end of December, which would have resulted in pulling from our reserve fund to make up the changes in salary that were approved. We also have the state legislature passing something that would cap cities' ability to raise millage in the future more than 3% or the rate of inflation. And we have a budget that is intensely lean. So if we right-size the budget by raising millage by roughly 20%, we cover that shortfall, so we're not eating into our reserve, which is great. If we don't go beyond that, though, we are consigning ourselves to a lifetime of lean budgets as long as the state is limiting our ability to raise property taxes in the future. That might be offset by various losses and things, but that has yet to be determined. So our ability to grow and change and adapt to other needs in the future kind of gets defined in this budget or in this millage rate discussion that we're having, because otherwise all we have is our reserve, a few bonds that are going to get paid down in the last couple of years and free up a little bit of money, and then a very thin margin in and if we want to consider other ways of being, they're all substantial. So I guess to echo Councilmember Kohler's point, I realize that what I'm about to say invites the torches and pitchforks, but I'm going to throw it out that we might want to consider giving ourselves the opportunity to discuss rates higher than 23.825 as a way to preserve Pine Lake's financial flexibility beyond 2026. I will say that with the caveat that I think it's the council's responsibility to look as aggressively as possible at alternate forms of revenue, alternate forms of getting the business of the city done as economically as possible. We're trying to have those discussions and get that in motion. It's uncomfortable. I'm offering to make it more uncomfortable. But I'm gonna be the one who's gonna say that.
I appreciate that.
Cheers.
And I am looking at it from a different point of view in that this is going to be the new normal. This is going to be the tax floor, and it's the highest millage that it's ever been, as far as I know. 24 is, it's going to hurt people. We already have seniors on a fixed income that can't afford a 20% increase on their tax bill. They're already taking advantage of food banks because they can't survive on what they have. And so raising it 20% forever, because as Councilmember Ramsey pointed out in the December meeting, there's no off-ramp. And I don't see one. When he said that there was no off-ramp, Mr. Hawthorne disagreed and said that there was, and that he would be working on a plan, and that he would have a backup plan, and that you'd be working with us, the new council, tirelessly to fix this. Those were your words. You were going to fix this. And that didn't happen. The budget amendments never came. This is going to hurt people, and I don't know what our options are. I regret approving these things in December, and now we're stuck with this bag, and there's no easy way out. There's no good way out except to raise our taxes. We did, our commercial went up, and that's kind of like what we've been told, as long as if we get more commercial income, more commercial revenue, it will lower property taxes. And it went up 20%, and we're raising our millage 20%. So I'm in favor of putting 23.82 as the highest possible, but I am also not convinced that that is what we should be passing.
Can I, before you go, can I clarify something and then be done?
Yep.
I just want to clarify that me saying going over 23.825 is not a commitment to vote for it, right? It's like wanting to have a conversation and have a buffer in the conversation. And I just want to ask, when you say that this will be the new baseline?
The new floor.
But why?
Because there's not a plan to lower this at any point.
Because of our fixed costs in terms of the budget. Because the budget that's being proposed is less in 2026 than it is in 2025. So not drastically, and it's not to say every year there's going to be a 40-some thousand reduction, but I think they're being stepped. I just want to make sure I'm following you, right?
But what we're trying to account now is already that lower budget. We're
Right.
raising it.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
But just that, we can keep, there are ways to do this in multiple directions, is my point.
So to clarify, what we're going to vote on is the highest end that we could approve. that doesn't mean that's what we approve. That just means that's what we are
Talking
capping
about.
it at.
Yeah.
And we could do anything up to that and lower than that.
Yeah.
The challenge is how, for example, if we do it at a higher rate than the proposed millage rate, will that be interpreted as we're raising taxes? Because it's not clearly stated, we are not. That's just the point to advertise, and that's the top end, and there's a range that will be considered. So that's all what the hearings are for, and the debates and conversations we'll have with residents and ourselves in the interim to the final vote. So as much as it sounds terrible to put anything higher than what it is, that's not what we're going to do. That's what we're going to talk about. So we have until June 30th to have those conversations with our residents, with each other, to fact find and to investigate and come to some understanding. So this is not any of us going on record saying, I'm in favor of that top dollar amount as the millage rate that we're going to approve. It's just saying that gives us that room to go the range. So the other range is the rollback rate. That's one end of the range. The other end of the range is the 24, or if we want to do anything different. So I'm not saying one way or the other about how I'm leaning. That's just the clarification of what it is we're talking about. Is that, am I understanding that, describing that correctly?
Yes.
I see nods. Thank you. I didn't hear anything. I saw nods.
So, I have a question. If we increase the millage rate, is it possible, if we really increase the millage rate, is it possible to set up a fund for residents who cannot afford the new millage rate?
Do you want the long answer or the short one?
Shoot. Give me the long answer.
The long answer is you're precluded by the state constitution from creating funds or providing public funds available to individuals where there's not a service provided back to the city in exchange for those funds, which is the long answer to say, no, you can't do that.
Okay. Because I'm concerned. I'm concerned about our neighbors. I mean, I've got several neighbors in a bad position. So those are just the ones I know about.
Well, being the only person who's probably qualifies here for senior homestead exemptions for property taxes, and I've taken full advantage of that because it's offered. And I know that when I was writing the news blast, I put that information out there. You can get I don't know what the right word is, from Georgia Power, from Georgia Natural Gas. You can apply as a senior for discounts. You can apply for a variety of homestead exemptions as a senior up to age 70, and it's primarily the county school tax that you're trying to exempt. I'll speak for myself. When I got approved last year, and I'm not at the highest rate, my property taxes, my bill dropped $2,500. That was all school tax, wasn't city tax. So one thing we certainly do need to do more of is let people know what is available, what resources are out there to alleviate that, because it's hard. And things we know are only going to keep costing more, and taxes are only going to keep going up. The SB 33 is a way to try to reconfigure how our state and local municipalities manage funding. So we're in a period of transition. We don't know what that's going to be. I think we need to have some lively conversation about this in the hearings in the 3 dates we have, and talk with our residents, and we need to figure it out.
Mayor Pro Tem, just to elaborate quickly on that, and I broke this down in the CAM. $47 million, I think I indicated was the gross digest for Pine Lake. The net digest is 46 million. I'm rounding off. So $1 million of that are exemptions that are taken advantage of from Pine Lake, that Pine Lake offers. The education piece is critical because we don't necessarily know if people are fully aware of that. And when I mentioned last year and the back and forth that went on between neighbors who came out in that early meeting and the council, that was the topic, where council members were literally explaining, and the people that were at the podium, they didn't know about it, and so they were eating it up. Now, I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but in case you all weren't aware, a proposal did come from Tom Ramsey, and it divided the council on the city considering an additional tax exemption for those neighbors that, and I remember him particularly, that he was concerned about. I mean, he had the numbers broken down, these neighbors and how they could benefit from it. The problem with that, and probably what caused the division, not because everybody wasn't sensitive, was what's the long-term impact when you do a proposal such as that. So we went out for a formal request for proposal, and we got back proposals that range from, I think it was 25,000 to 85,000 in order to do the study. So it costs money to do the study itself, or with annexation, it costs money to, get to that next step, which then goes back to the fund balance issue. If you're going to use fund balance, it should be on those type of one-time uses.
Something that's been on my mind as well is, I don't know if we can sponsor this or organize it in the official capacity as the city, but maybe it's something Plain can do, or like Councilmember Lowers, you work a lot with aging, and maybe if you have contacts, but I would love to have like seminars and education for residents here that, that talk to people about the exemptions, that talk about if you're a disabled veteran or whatever the qualifications are, because I do want residents to know that stuff and really take advantage of it. And I think that's also useful, and that gives us an even better sense of what our resources are here in terms of taxation. So I hope that's something that we can look at in before the end of the year, as people think about filing in 2026 or 2027 for their 2026 taxes.
I think the bottom line is we have very limited options for 2026, but all the issues that we're talking about are underscored and are underscored by the bigger conversation that we're having about what is the future of Pine Lake. Are we an expensive enclave for people who can afford it? Are we a scrappy little arts community that finds a different way around it? Are we perhaps bigger than the traditional borders? All those things are on the table, and if people are facing shock this year and the prospect of that shock lasting for multiple years, that's why we need to have this conversation seriously as a community in the coming months. We started at Town Hall, the last one, and it needs to keep going, so the millage is a part of it.
So for now, we should be voting on if we're approving the 23.825. Does anybody think that we should make it higher?
I do.
What would you like to see it?
I mean, I'm not comfortable giving a number given my lack of experience in this area. I mean, 24 is just a very easy, like, flat number. And again, none of it's any sort of projection on how I'll vote in June, but given that this is a lean budget that doesn't have a lot of buffer, like if it were me budgeting for my own household, if I were gonna think about it for a month and I had to choose my maximum now, I would give myself a buffer.
I'll offer a buffer, a rate of 26 mils. That's based on nothing, but it's about 100,000 more if I'm understanding the rate, the value of a mil. It's about 100,000 more than what's in line. Again, I'm not saying I would vote for it, but I want us to have
A healthy gap.
I want us to have a discussion that can incorporate multiple possibilities.
I appreciate that.
I was trying to look up what Clarkston was raising theirs for. City Manager Hawthorne, do you have that information right at hand? By
Well,
chance?
I remember it was around 40%. And that's another way you can think of this percentage. Right now, the number is 19.38%. We could figure out what 26 is if you're uncomfortable with that percentage-wise, for instance. We may not get the final numbers, but, you know, if you wanted to round it off to a percentage that you were more comfortable with. But definitely, the finance director will need to work with the numbers.
They are doing an increase of 41.23%.
Oh, and can I add, another reason I would like to have a buffer is specifically because, or one of the reasons is because our finance director isn't here to like go into some of these nitty gritty things that I think for me are definitely going to get me towards where I'm going to vote. But not having that, I like the idea of having a buffer.
So, based on Councilmember Lauer's number, that percentage is 30%, 30.28%.
Thank you.
So Clarkston is increasing their mill by 5.634 mils. And that is totally in anticipation of SB 33 capping their millage rate. So do we have a motion to, is that what we do if we're going to change the CAM resolution? Chris?
Somehow got lost in the question. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can you try it again for me, please?
If we were to want to do a different figure for the millage rate, do we have to have a motion to change that resolution?
Yes, sir. You need a formal motion to amend the resolution as presented by staff to whatever the new number is. And just to be clear, we're not setting the millage rate. What you're doing is setting a ceiling for what the millage rate consideration can be. And that's what Clarkston's 40% increase is the ceiling against which their millage rate rise will hit.
Yep, that's their high end.
All right, well, I may as well take all the heat. So, I make a motion that we amend Resolution R 2026-28 to set a cap on the millage rate discussion at 26 mils.
I'll second.
So in this conversation, can we actually discuss that before we vote?
Yes.
So we're talking about going from 23, keeping it at 23.825 to 26, or anything in between?
Anything under 26.
Right. Well,
So it would be between, the floor, as it currently is in the motion, is 19.957, which is the rollback rate.
And the top end
The
is,
top end would be the number identified by Councilmember Lowers.
right, so we could also have a motion to do 25, to doing 24.5. So that's what I'm saying, is that doesn't have to be the only vote for that, for 26. It could be anything up to 26 or anything number we want beyond that.
Right,
Well,
you mean in the future? You mean when you,
Just tonight.
oh, just tonight, yeah.
So you have a motion on the floor to raise the recommended cap to 26 even, if I understood the motion correctly.
So we vote that yea or nay.
If that's approved, that's the new number. If that's rejected for any reason, then there would we would go back to the 23,825, which is in the motion as proposed, and there would be discussion about what number less than 26 you might get a majority for.
Okay, so it's just coming up with a different number if we choose to. So we have a motion, we have a second.
And now we discuss before we vote.
I believe so.
I respect you a great deal. 23.825 is already past my comfort zone, so I cannot support 26.
I'm not proposing that you vote that we're gonna get taxed at that rate. I'm proposing that we talk about what the consequences pro or con would be over the next month.
Okay.
Other points of discussion?
So, yeah, I mean, I am okay with setting that high cap. So there can be a pie in the sky conversation about what we could do with any overage the city would have to develop a strong economic development plan. So we can lower the millage rate in the future.
If we put it at 26, it'll be advertised as that. And then people look on their phones and say, what is Pine Lake doing? And it will be 26, as Mayor Pro Tem just did. And I think if we have any future hope of annexation, 24 is going to be bad enough as it is to convince people, but 26 I think is even more. I could say it. I could see 24. I can't support 26, and you don't need me. So if everyone is ready to vote.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, may I interject, please, briefly?
Certainly.
The annexation conversation is not directly part of tonight's consideration, because whatever annexation plan comes forward will be a fully municipalized DeKalb County and done by the legislature. This is not a situation where they're going to submit it for referendum to the people of DeKalb County saying, I want to be in this city, that city, or some other city. It's going to be the legislator being presented with one map that everybody in local government has agreed to, from the county commission, the CEO, to every city council and mayor in DeKalb County. And the legislature will decide whether that's a plan they want to live with or not. So while I appreciate your concern, and it's not a inappropriate conversation, it's just irrelevant to the issue that you're being asked to do, because this is not a situation where we're going to have to make a public appeal to people who are going to vote at a referendum on whether or not they want to be part of Pine Lake or not. So I just want to make sure that you're clear about why the two discussions are independent of one another while you're still talking about what your options are. Fundamentally, if there is an annexation, you will first and foremost be looking for whatever commercial properties you can add to the city's tax base, which aren't homestead exempted, can't be homestead exempted, and don't put, generally speaking, on constituents the cost of running the city's business. So when you create that additional commercial base, you are able to then lower the overall tax burden because there's larger contributions from people who are not homeowners. So the challenge that you face tonight is, how do you answer the bell for the fiscal issues that Pine Lake faces in 2026 and 2027? That's the only question. The annexation question is going to be battled out in DMA amongst the various city leaders and the county commission over the next 18 to 24 months, independently of what your millage rate is.
So what we're talking about, regardless of what we decide tonight, is the next month we have to have some hard conversations. And some of that is about the future of the city, what we want to be as a city, how we can afford to be whatever that dream is, that hope is, and how we could support our residents to do that. This is, again, this is not a final vote on the rate. This is just a cap. So what I would propose is a middle ground between the two numbers being thrown out. So we have 26 and 23.
I also just want to mention that coming here tonight, I had several conversations with city staff, with former council members, and, you know, really wanted to think seriously about bringing that up, because I agree with the sort of like shock moment when people see that in their emails. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to work on communication and education in these email blasts that are going out. And I also ultimately would rather have some unintended sort of shock in reading an email than compromise the future of the city and the budget for next year. So I I agree with you, that is like, whoa. I can only imagine being in Clarkston and maybe getting that email, that's a pretty intense thing to read. And it affects me too. I live here. So I just want to point out, like, I didn't suggest this just out of like having a wild hair tonight.
Yeah, to echo your point, since Thomas, I feel like possibly I suddenly have grown a second and third head.
No.
But that's kind of the point, is to get people out and get people engaged in this conversation. If that number is scary to you, please come talk to us and help us chart our course and chart the course for our neighbors. Like, those are the stakes. So I also don't want to vote for something that high, but let's go ahead and all be scared together.
Any more comments? So we have a motion to amend the resolution with the number of 26 mills. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are we ready for a vote? So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion is passed. Again, just as a reminder to the community, this is not a vote on the millage rate. This is a vote on the advertised rate as the cap of the millage. This is an opportunity for some serious conversations with each other, with council, with Mayor Pro Tem, with yourself, to figure out who we are, how we can be, and how we want to be, not just now, but in 10, 20, 30 years from now. Opportunity now for public comment. Come up, please. 3 minutes. Adjust the microphone as needed. State your name and your residence, please, your address.
Hello, Mira Alibasic, 734 Oak Hill Circle. I would like to mention that I think we need more trash cans at the beach. Last year we had issues. There is only one. And I would suggest some big metal drums that are not expensive, because people, especially on the weekends, come with the big pizza boxes and really making a mess. And also, I have something I want to propose, or just say, I don't know, is it appropriate after such difficult conversation, but that mileage is very, that whatever tax mileage, I don't know how you pronounce that, is very harsh on citizens. But also, I would like to ask if would city also give something in returns. So I have a question for Mr. Stanley. Does city has KPI, key performance indicator? Other municipalities has it. It is, I will read what is in the internet. Quantifiable, measurable value that organization use to track how effectively they are achieving crucial business objectives. And it breaks down to metrics that tracks the general health of everyday business in each department. We have that at work. I work for a corporation. So I would just give you opportunity to maybe something to think about, to come up, to see what other municipalities has, because for personally, I don't pay taxes, but for taxes that they were paid, I don't think that citizens get back value in like cleaning a street or cutting the grass or just these essentials. Thank you so much for doing.
Thank you, Mira. Any other public comment? Please come on up. No other public comment, reports, and other business, and I would offer this to council first, and then I will go after. So starting over here, any additional reports or other business? Councilmember Hull?
Just that we've started a shared calendar so we can all try to be present at local events and make the connections we need to make. To do better.
And Councilmember Hull, because I know the phone calls and emails will be in my inbox in the morning, there is a specific exception in the Open Meetings Act to all of those kinds of general meetings with other elected officials or other local governments or the county and those kinds of things involving even a quorum of this body. So anybody who wants to email about Open Meetings Act violations in the city of Pine Lake because y'all are sharing information about these informations can just forget asking the question because you now have the answer.
Thank you.
Councilmember Torrance?
No.
Any World Cup updates?
No. You sent out the issue about numbers to call for embassies in case just in case.
I have no idea what, there was an email from the chief of staff for our CEO, sending it out to all the mayors, mayor pro tems, contact information for all the consulates in the metro Atlanta area. So I passed that on to our public safety, our city manager, and our city attorney, and our city clerk, and the governing body. Councilmember Kohler, comments,
I'm
reports?
looking forward to all of our conversations in June. I think that these are just really vital, and I am very not attached to a number right now. I'm really here for the conversations and getting into all of these implications.
I will report, I've been spending a lot of time talking with and setting up meetings and meeting with elected officials from other municipalities. For example, tomorrow I'm meeting with the city manager and the mayor, the newly elected mayor of Stone Mountain. One of the conversation points that keeps resonating with these different elected officials I've been talking with is and it seems like there's a energy in the county for municipalities to figure out ways to either share jobs through IGAs, intergovernmental agreements, to band together to solicit bids on contracts. So when one of the issues we have is we can't get enough people to bid on jobs, if we're working in concert with, for example, Avondale, Stone Mountain, and Lithonia, and they all have jobs, and we could package them together somehow to get a big bid that someone may be more interested in than just a smaller bid from Pine Lake. So there's some energy going to trying to find ways for the municipalities to work together to find more efficient and less costly ways to get things done. It's actually pretty exciting because I went to one meeting and I brought that up and they said, great idea. And then all of a sudden I went to another meeting a week later and it's like, oh, we've been talking about that. And so there's something shifting, hopefully, and some of that's being driven by our county CEO. Some of it is just by the individual elected officials trying to find new and creative ways to do what we do, which is run a city expediently, profitably in terms of getting bang for our buck on delivering services. So I'm really excited about that. I have nothing else to report, so any call for executive session?
We discussed at the last executive session holding a second one this week. I don't know whether you've got the bandwidth for it tonight or not, because I've not heard from any of you about in the answer to that, but personnel would be the topic if you decide you want to undertake that conversation.
I do.
That's at least one yes. I'm seeing a lot of other 4 no's, or at least non-committal responses, so I don't think so, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
So I see more questions than no's. I would be in favor of one.
I'm willing.
Yeah, if we need to.
Then, yeah, for personnel only, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so that means we need to shift into executive session. We need to,
You need a motion to go into executive session for
I
personnel.
move that we go into executive session for
do we
personnel.
have a second?
I'll second that.
What's it? So thank you all for being here. We are going to move into executive session.